So, welcome everyone. Thanks for taking a Thursday evening. If your weather is anything like my weather here, it's a tough evening to give up and stay inside, glued once again to a Zoom screen. But I think that this investment of time and indoorness will be really worthwhile for all of you. I'm Susan Cousins. I'm from Eastside Friends Meeting, and I'm one of the folks that's been getting the Northwest Quaker Palestine Israel Network going. And our guest for this evening is Allison Tanner. And I'm just going to say a few words of introduction for her because when I asked her for some background, I learned all kinds of things about her that I didn't know before. But she's going to be talking from her experience over quite a long time in Palestine and watching the apartheid regime take hold there. But what my big surprise was that Allison, who works part-time for the American Friends Service Committee, running this apartheid-free pledge program, her other part-time job is as a Baptist pastor at Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church in Oakland, California, and she has a title that I think we would all like in some form, and I believe, knowing a lot of the people on this screen, we probably all also live up to in some form, and that is pastor of public witness, which is something that we are all dedicated to, as you are, Allison. Allison's going to talk for a while. She's going to explain um, why the word apartheid is important in this movement and really give us a sense of it. She's going to share examples of what other meetings are doing, but also the other thing I really learned about her is that she's very active in interfaith work for Palestine. And so I hope we will feel free to pump her for information on how can we be effective in the interfaith environment, which helps to amplify the signal that we're trying to send around Palestine. She's going to talk for 35, 40 minutes, but leave time for questions and answers specifically on her talk. And then about at the hour, we're going to shift gears and open up discussion for folks from North Pacific Yearly Meeting to express support or concerns or reservations about having North Pacific Yearly Meeting take the apartheid-free pledge. So, Allison, thank you very much for the time you're taking with us this evening. We're all yours.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and let me add my thanks for really taking this time to learn more about apartheid-free communities and the invitation to engage in solidarity with Palestinians in this very specific way. I know there was a program last month on international law and the charge of apartheid, and so I'll kind of start. Where that left off in apartheid-free communities being a response to this call. Let me start by giving you a little bit of history about the origins of apartheid-free communities. In 2021 and 2022, we hit a moment in time in which there was international consensus among every major human rights group that Israel was guilty of the crime of apartheid according to international law. And this ranges from Human Rights Watch to Amnesty International to B'Tselem, an Israeli human rights organization. Palestinian human rights organizations have long named their situation apartheid. South African human rights organizations have said, yes, this is apartheid. And so we got to international consensus, which was a moment in time in which the moment was ripe for taking action. Um, Also, at this time, a call had gone out from Palestinian civil society to the international community um, to say one of the things that you can do to truly stand with us in solidarity is to work for what they call apartheid-free zones or places that seek to cut ties, to separate themselves from Israeli apartheid. And shortly thereafter, a group called Kairos Palestine, which is a Palestinian Christian group, wrote a document that really became kind of our Bible. It's a dossier on Israeli apartheid, and it was a pressing call to churches around the world. And this little book was a call to the international church to say, will you name our situation apartheid and take action appropriately? So in the wake of these three things, international consensus, Palestinian call for apartheid-free zones, and the Palestinian Christian call to churches to name their situation apartheid, AFSC brought together representatives from every major denomination in the United States and Canada to say, we want to come together in this moment to do something. And we really asked the question in this moment, what is ours to do? And that's when this idea of creating a a pledge, but creating a statement that people could affirm and live into really was birthed. And we said what we would love to do is to create apartheid-free churches. But even as we were at that gathering, we had some Jewish friends, we had some folks who said, oh, church doesn't necessarily encompass who we are as a faith community. So then we said, well, how about apartheid-free congregations? We want faith communities of all types to be able to engage, to collectively make this commitment. And even then, we had this vision that we wanted it to grow far beyond faith communities. We wanted communities of conscience to join us. And so that's where we said, okay, what about apartheid-free communities? All communities of all types can be invited to make this commitment to cut ties with Israeli apartheid. And so we agreed on that. And then we agreed on pledge language. And I want to lift up the AFSC in their strategic plan for 2020 to 2030 had two commitments that we were really tapping into when we created this. And one commitment is that no one is our enemy. Everyone has the capacity to change. And another commitment is that we must cut ties with systems, structures, and government entities that are causing great harm. So those two core principles were guiding this. And so then one of the first things that AFSC wanted to do before we launched this Apartheid-Free Communities initiative was to take a delegation to Palestine to look very specifically at Palestinian experiences of apartheid in various parts of Palestine, in Palestinian citizens of Israel, Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem, Palestinians who lived in the West Bank, who lived in Gaza. And so we took this delegation and we created just an 8-minute video that allows Palestinians to share their own stories. And so I know you've done the history of apartheid, but I want to show this video just to remind ourselves of what the on the ground realities are. And some of you may know David Small. He was the Quaker representative who came on the delegation, and you may know some of my colleagues as well. So let me. Okay, you can see the video screen? Okay, here we go.
So
Yes.
me, who grew up here, I'm asking you, a person from very far away, to please push your congressman to push to end the occupation, to actually let these people remain in their houses.
In May 2023, the American Friends Service Committee led a delegation of faith leaders on a journey to Palestine. Their mission to bear witness to the harsh realities of Israeli apartheid. Throughout their journey, they encountered a matrix of control that affected every aspect of daily life for Palestinians, systematically displacing and dispossessing Palestinians from their land, communities, resources, and culture. This video shares what the delegation witnessed and how they are working with Palestinians and Israelis to end Israeli apartheid, settler colonialism, and military occupation through the creation of apartheid-free communities. On their first day together, the delegation walked from the old city of Jerusalem to an area in East Jerusalem called Solon, where the Israeli government continues to evict Palestinians from their homes to make way for Israeli settlers. In the hills, the murals of the international art project Eyewitness Solon depicted the eyes of local and international leaders, activists, and artists. Visible from tourist attractions and Israeli settlements, these eyes not only beckon viewers to bear witness to Palestinian displacement, but also dare to challenge occupying forces with their own gazes. Their message echoed throughout the journey. The stories of everyday Palestinians need to be seen and heard. Perhaps the most stark example of the fragmentation and isolation of Palestinian communities is the ongoing blockade of Gaza that began in 2007.
This was May of 2023.
Because the delegation was not able to get Israeli military-issued permits to enter Gaza, delegates connected with AFSC staff living in Gaza via Zoom to virtually tour the 25-mile stretch of land along the Mediterranean Sea. While speaking with staff about the work they are doing alongside local communities, Israeli F-16 fighter jets could be heard in the distance bombing Gaza. Despite the imminent threat, AFSC staff continued with the Zoom call and rejected the suggestions by the delegates to end the call and seek shelter. "Nowhere here is safe," replied the staff. The bombing would continue for 5 days, with the escalated military attacks resulting in the deaths of 34 Palestinians and 1 Israeli. The delegation's path led to El-Her, a Bedouin village in the South Hebron Hills of the West Bank that constantly faces the risk of demolition and displacement despite the residents having legal ownership of the land. The families of El-Her are descendants of Palestinians who were forced off their lands in Al-Arad and the Nakab Desert during the 1948 war. Since 2007, the Israeli army has repeatedly demolished their homes and infrastructure and restricted their access to lands for grazing their livestock.
If we ask everyone in Al-Khair what their dreams are, all of them will mention water, electricity, good house. We are not asking about jobs or like travels or cars or money or whatever. We want to feel safe.
In Al-Arqib, a village in the northern Nakab Desert within Israel, the delegation met with Sheikh Saya Aturi and his son Aziz, who shared their struggle to remain on their historic lands and preserve their culture threatened by settler colonialism and repeated demolitions. Despite holding Israeli citizenship, the villagers of Al-Arqib and other Palestinian citizens of Israel don't necessarily fare any better than their Palestinian counterparts living under occupation.
No democracy. No democracy when we ask the government to recognize our area, our land. No, it's state land.
Al-Arqib has been demolished over 217 times since 2010. According to Mohammed Zaidan, former director of the Arab Association for Human Rights, apartheid for Palestinian citizens of Israel functions in 4 ways. 1. Legal direct discrimination, such as exclusive rights of Jewish people, including the nation-state law, the law of return, and the laws governing the use of land. 2. Legal indirect discrimination, including access to jobs and resources linked to military service. 3. Institutional discrimination, including the distribution of educational and community resources. 4. Public opinion, including discrimination encouraged in the public sphere in the rise of racist attacks against Palestinians. Since the year 2000, Israel has arrested 13,000 Palestinian children between the ages of 12 and 18. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers are subject to Israeli civilian laws, while Palestinians live under military law. Over 600 children are under house arrest in Jerusalem. One such child is Shadi Hori, a 16-year-old student attending a Quaker school in Ramallah. The delegation met Shadi and his family while he remained under house arrest, 7 months after being beaten and dragged from his bedroom in the middle of the night, falsely accused of throwing stones. "They have turned our home into a prison," said Shadi's mother. Shadi was awaiting a court hearing the week we visited. and we asked if he and his family had hope. When justice is on your side, you can't lose hope, said his grandmother. We don't have the luxury to lose hope, his mother added. As the delegation's time drew to a close, the group toured the remains of the village of Ma'lul near Nazareth. During the creation of Israel, over 500 Palestinian villages were destroyed and approximately 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly removed. Ma'lul was one such village that was destroyed, and it serves as a haunting reminder of the foundation of displacement, destruction, and dispossession that the state of Israel was founded upon. Feeling the weight of all they had witnessed over the past week, the delegates left the tour of Ma'lul with an even stronger commitment to return home and tell the truth of what they witnessed and to empower their communities to take action to end this ongoing catastrophe. The situation in Palestine is dire. From 1948 to today, the state of Israel has been destroying lives, families, and whole communities. But together, we can join hands and rise up. Following the steadfast leadership of Palestinians themselves, together we can work to end apartheid and ensure freedom for the Palestinian people and all people. We invite you to join the American Friends Service Committee in signing the Apartheid-Free Communities Pledge, standing alongside a growing network of faith communities, nonprofits, businesses, and institutions committed to dismantling Israeli apartheid. Visit apartheid-free.org to take the pledge.
So I'm gonna switch now to talking very specifically about the apartheid-free pledge and what its goals are, how it functions, and the easiest way to do that is to begin with the pledge itself. I want to note that I am now on the apartheid-free website, and you can see right here at the top, apartheid-free.org. I want to share with you a number of things about the pledge through this website, and I'm doing that because I want you to see all the resources that are available at your fingertips through the website. I think that might be useful. So starting, and this actually, if you go to Apartheid Free, this is the main page, our basic commitment. All people are equal and should be treated with dignity and respect. We have 3 sections on the website: learn, all kinds of ways to learn, take the pledge, and then a variety of ways to take action. So let's start with the pledge. And here it is. We affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people. And we wanted to specify here that this is a pledge really recognizing that Palestinians don't have and are in need of deserving freedom, justice, and equality. And they're deserving of that, not in a unique way, but in a way in which all people are deserving of that. And because they don't have it, we need to name that specifically. So that acknowledgement. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression. And this absolutely includes any form of anti-Semitism, anti-Palestinian hate, Islamophobia, all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression. We declare ourselves an apartheid-free community. And here, first, I want to focus on the word community. There are a lot of ways in which individuals can take action for Palestine, but we really wanted to move beyond individual action to collective action, to individuals going to their communities and talking to people they know and moving toward collective action, and especially among faith communities, having faith communities speak collectively of this pledge that's rooted in faith values of worshiping communities. And I also want to note that in this phrase, we declare ourselves an apartheid-free community, that there's an understanding that this is aspirational. That it is impossible, certainly if you live in the United States, to completely cut off all complicity to what's happening, because the ways in which our government, our media, our tax dollars are supporting Israel, and yet we need to work toward. We need to set down aspirations that then commit us to things we live into. And I like to say, much like my commitment to be anti-racist is going to be a lifelong commitment, but an important one for me to make as I go forward. So too, this aspirational piece of the pledge is there and important to be named. The And then finally, we pledge to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation. And this very specific language comes from Palestinian leadership. Palestinian leadership saying that these are the root causes of our oppression, and it would be really helpful to us if you are willing to name them for what they are. A lot of people ask, why does the pledge not name genocide? And that's because the pledge was written um, before October 7th. And so we didn't want to switch gears for those who had already talked about, for those who had already signed it. We were already building a movement and we didn't want to change the language. We did go back to our Palestinian partners a few months after October 7th to say, I know that the situation has shifted radically. Is this still what would be useful, what you'd like us to do? And they said very specifically, yes, yes, apartheid is a root cause of the genocide. It's what's led us to this point. And so still working to name apartheid and to work um, to work to cut ties with apartheid is what we want you to be doing. So that's the pledge. I see that there are a few questions in the chat that are being answered. One of the things I want to point you to on our website is our resources section. In our resources, let's go down to introductory material. There are a variety of materials, including the Witnessing Apartheid video, but videos from let's see, from videos. This is the dossier on Israeli apartheid. Here's a video from Amnesty International. Here's a video from Mondaweiss, all using Human Rights Watch, Al Jazeera, all using international law and international law's definitions of apartheid and then explaining how what Israel is doing violates these international laws. And if international law is violated, then the international community has a responsibility to step in and do something. So these materials become a really great resource. And someone was just saying here, what constitutes the crime of apartheid? Well, according to international law, there are three conditions that have to be met for something to rise to the level of the crime of apartheid: an intent to maintain domination by one racial group over another, a context by one racial group over another, and inhumane acts. And if you check in with some of these videos, you'll be able to see how each of these is lived out. But indeed, we saw each of these criteria being met just in the video that we watched. I do want to note that as we created the pledge, a few other things to share. One, the pledge was written in the vein of ways in which particularly faith communities played a role in ending South African apartheid and ending Jim Crow apartheid here in the United States. The faith community had a specific role in both cases to use our voice of moral authority to force the powers that be to acknowledge what was happening and to work to challenge them to work to end them. So I want to just name that piece as well. The other piece I want to show you, again, in resources, you'll find a number of videos. You'll find a number of visual graphics. You'll also find campaign materials. So here we have posters and we have brochures, and this brochure talks a little bit more specific about the crime of apartheid. And you'll have a variety of different materials that get used. There's a really good apartheid-free churches FAQ that talks about why it's so important for churches to consider signing the pledge. Many folks ask the question, okay, we understand this is a pledge that names Israeli apartheid, but what does it call us to do? Because it is actually a pledge to take action. And so we provide, and I think I showed you on the very front page, we provide you with a list of ways to consider taking action as a part of your pledge commitment. And when you sign the pledge, you do commit to action. What that action is not specific. We don't say this is what you need to do when you sign the pledge. We recognize that contexts are different. And in fact, we want communities to think about what their strengths are, what their relationships are, what their partners are, what missions they already are involved in and committed to, and then think through what would make sense in that context. But we also want to give a variety of different ideas, ways for people to think through what action might look like so that they could decide what is right for them. And so here I'm going to go to the communities of faith section, um, and just a variety of different ways. And each of these are different ways in which different communities are living into the pledge. The first section simply is educating your congregation, doing the work of naming apartheid and empowering your community to understand the charge of apartheid. And so there's the dossier on Israeli apartheid and a three-part study guide. There's a new study guide put out by Kairos Palestine's A Moment of Truth, Faith in a Time of Genocide. There's a variety of different ways throughout the year to lift up apartheid. There's Bible studies that connect the struggles for justice for Palestinians with justice for Black people in America. Another major way in which people take action is to educate their community or do awareness raising, and they can do that by putting an apartheid-free poster up in their meeting. They can do that by writing a press release to the local media, by having educational events, by showing films or bringing in Palestinian speakers, or you organizing a delegation to Palestine. All kinds of different ways to educate the larger community. The second major way people consider taking action is to engage in advocacy. And here, the American Friends Service Committee has a great action hour once a week, and several meetings encourage folks to join that. But then there's a variety of other organizations that provide ways to engage in advocacy as well, and very specific advocacy campaigns, such as Block the Bombs or the Genocide Resolution. And then advocating for Gaza is another major way in which people take action, engaging in economic activism through a variety of different boycotts. And the ones that we are currently really pushing are the Chevron boycott, Purge Palantir, No Tech for Apartheid, and then the work of divestment. And my colleagues at AFSC have provided a number of resources around divestment and what that might look like. Finally, simply making a financial contribution to support apartheid-free communities so that we can continue to grow and develop the work that we're doing is always helpful. So I've given you a whole lot of different ways in which we can think about taking action. I want to kind of synthesize it into three main ways in which we're working to cut ties with Israeli apartheid. We're working to cut ties with narratives of apartheid, to do the work of changing the narrative, to change the narrative, to acknowledge and really normalize, make it known to everybody that Israel is guilty of the crime of apartheid and needs to be held accountable. Second, we're working to change the politics that support Israeli apartheid. And we do that through a variety of different advocacy methods And then third, changing the economics that support Israeli apartheid. So whether you're working to change narratives, change politics, or change economics, each of those three fronts, any work that you do can be very, very powerful. The one other thing I want to highlight on, and now I want to give you an idea of who the communities are who have already taken the pledge. We launched in June of 2023, and so we're getting close to our 3-year anniversary. And at this point, we have 1,183 communities who have signed the pledge and are willing to publicly name their commitment to living out this commitment. We have a category of artists and musicians. We have a huge category of businesses. Not quite a third of the communities are businesses. We have 177 congregations and another 200 faith-based communities. And I'll give you Quaker numbers in just a minute. We'll go down that road as well. 14 municipalities have signed the pledge. And in fact, on the website, you can click on any one of these to see what they are. And so here, 14 different municipalities, mostly in Vermont, a few in Canada, and different at the city level, and they've signed it in a variety of different ways, but a whole city has made this commitment. There's several hundred solidarity organizations, dozens of campus groups, students, faculty, and staff, and then unions and political parties that have also signed the pledge. And then we also have a map so that you can get a feel for in your area who has signed the pledge. And this is where I actually, you can go to the map, but I already went there and kind of made it large in this region so that you can just get a feel for what it looks like across the country. And you can see certainly British Columbia has a ton of signatures. About a third of our signatories come from Canada, primarily British Columbia. But in the state of Washington, you can just click on, there's a Pioneer United Methodist Church, Eugene Friends Church. There's the Sunny Slope Church of the Brethren, but not just churches. There are solidarity groups like Montana for Palestine. What's this one? Peace and Justice Action League of Spokane. There's also businesses. The Great Adventure Weddings and Elopements wants to be an apartheid-free business. What do we have here? Dolan's Painting Incorporated. So this gives you a feel for the breadth of different communities that have taken the pledge and that are living it out, again, in a variety of different ways, because what it means for a painting company to live it out would be very different than a solidarity group or a congregation. So, okay. So then let's go back to let me just show you how I got here. If we go back to the main page under communities, you'll see affinity groups, and different regions and different groups have come together with a variety of different commonalities to create their own affinity groups or kind of subgroups within the movement. And apartheid-free Quakers is one of them, so that every Quaker community who has taken the pledge has the ability to have a representative come to a once-a-month meeting in which Quaker groups network together. And they network together to support one another, to strategize different ways to think through living out the pledge, and to think through how collectively they might live out the pledge. And so for the Quaker affinity group, you have a whole resource page that gives you even more Quaker specific materials. There's an apartheid-free FAQ for Quakers. There's addressing common Quaker concerns on signing the pledge, engaging critics in of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, a resource for activists, a variety of different materials. And then actually, if we keep going down here, there's apartheid-free Quaker communities. And if you click on that, this is a updated list of how many Quaker communities have signed the pledge. And currently, As of this month, 67 Quaker communities have signed the pledge. 54 of those are full meetings. 55 are meetings. One is a portion of a meeting because let's see if we can figure out where that one is. Northside Friends Meetings Committee for Ministry on Racism has signed the pledge. So there, the full meeting wasn't yet or isn't yet able to sign the pledge, but a subgroup within the meeting has signed, and sometimes these subgroups sign. The Peace and Social Concerns Committee might sign and then do the work, and then over time. For several of these, the full meeting has signed, and then we update their signatory. There are 10 regional yearly meetings or committees of regional yearly meetings that have signed. And the full meetings, I know Iowa yearly meeting conservative has signed, South Central yearly meeting has signed, and then several meetings have subgroup. An Atlantic half yearly meeting in Canada has signed, and then several subcommittees of yearly meetings have signed. And then finally, two national / international Quaker organizations have signed: American Friends Service Committee and Quaker Palestine Israel Network. And of course, chapters of Quaker Palestine Israel Network can sign as well. Let me stop there. I've given you a lot of information, and so I want to have some time for Q&A. I'm sure I missed a few things, and your Q&A will encourage me to unpack a little bit more different pieces. But what questions are there?
Thank you so much. Let's see,
Oh,
I see one physical hand, but go right ahead, Allison.
there was one thing I really wanted to show you because you wanted to know how Quaker communities were living out the pledge. Um, and so let me just say a few words just to give you an idea of how different meetings are living out the pledge.
Thank you.
And here I can give you this is a graphic that Steve Chase put together. And you can see here going starting clockwise. Here, this is a FCNL group, and many meetings are engaging in advocacy through FCNL. This second photo is actually a Fridays at Fetterman photo with George Lakey and others, and engaging in public witness is one of the ways in which many Quaker communities are living out the pledge. This photo right here is of a Gaza 5K from Washington Friends who made this commitment to do the 5K as humanitarian aid work. Friends meeting Washington. Their Peace and Social Concerns Committee chose to participate in that. And then if we keep going down, you can see here, this is in Vermont, many of these municipality campaigns were going on to create apartheid-free towns and cities, and a few meetings in Vermont were very much a part of that advocacy work on the state level. This is just an example of ways in which meetings are engaging in a variety of the different boycotts, like No Tech for Apartheid. This Palestine film series is an example of some of the variety of different educational ways in which meetings are working to educate their larger community. And then, of course, engaging in boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And that's one where I know right now Baltimore Yearly Meeting is working on a Breaking the Bonds campaign, and they're doing presentations on BDS and thinking through their own investments and what it might mean to divest from Israeli apartheid. And then the last story I want to share is Red Cedar Friends in East Lansing, Michigan. They signed the pledge, and at the time that they signed the pledge, they noticed that a local masjid had signed the pledge as well. And then there was also a UCC community that was considering signing the pledge. And so they got these three congregations together. And because they had a Muslim community, a Quaker community, a Protestant community, they came together and they actually formed an interfaith network. And they brought in a handful of other faith communities to partner with them and started doing education at the interfaith level. And so they really started doing some coalition building in which people came together through the pledge commitment and were able to find each other and then have been able to do more and more work. So that just gives you a taste of the spectrum of ways in which Quaker communities specifically are living into their pledge commitments. I'll stop now for
Again, thank you. You can go ahead and call on people. If I see anybody that you're missing, I'll call that to your attention.
yes. Okay. And Bob.
Yes, first of all, thank you. You answered my fundamental question. Let me see if I've got it in a nutshell. Between apartheid and genocide, briefest thing I can say is apartheid is intentional systemic dominance, and genocide is intentional systemic depopulation. Is that close enough for kind of?
That yes. Not being a international law expert, that
But
sounds pretty good to me.
all
And
right.
and and,
I'm not
and
trying
any
to be a
ratio,
lawyer. I'm trying to explain it to other people
and
quickly and simply.
and I think that the word erasure, so there's the depopulation, but there's also erasure of a people. So
Erasure.
erasure of culture, erasure of history, erasure of presence.
So my question is, as always, the difference between signing up and acting is always the challenge. Um, you mentioned the monthly AFSC meeting. What is that called, and how is it listed, or where and when can we find out about it? And
So
this,
the Quaker Affinity Group that meets once a month that organizes among Quaker communities who signed the pledge. I think that's the one you're talking about.
well, anything like that, yes.
Um,
And the
so
Friday morning, I'll put the link in the chat.
okay. Yeah, those are two different things. One, AFSC does a weekly 1 hour call where people can join a Zoom and take action together collectively in that hour.
Mhm.
And those are really powerful. And I encourage any of you who aren't signed up for that to do so. But then this other thing that I was talking about, the Quaker Affinity Group, any meeting who has signed the pledge or any Quaker community who's signed the pledge, when you sign the pledge, there's one representative who signs the pledge, and that representative gets reached out to be invited to this monthly time of strategizing how collectively Quakers can take action. So that's kind of the process through which that happens. And
Thank you.
that really is for folks who've already taken the pledge. Occasionally if there's someone who's really interested and their meeting is in process, maybe they can sit in on one or two of those and I can give you the person to talk to. But that really is thinking through how can our different meetings, both individually and collectively, work to take action.
Thank you very much.
There's a question from Lenny Askarin in the chat. Are there opportunities to provide financial support to Palestinian organizations that are working to support victims of Israeli settler violence? Our meeting has made a donation, she says, to Ramallah Friends School, but they are severely restricted in their activities now.
So AFSC has staff on the ground, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. And so, that's kind of my primary go-to that, my colleagues are working really hard and support for them would be great. And they're one among, um, uh, Mecca Middle East Children's Alliance is another org I highly recommend, but not at the expense of the work of my colleagues.
Lenny, that'd be a great project for our network to take up is just to do some group sharing and put together a list of the organizations that we found and then keep adding to it.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that I'm aware of a couple of organizations, and I just don't even know if they're able to be active now. Hanan Ashwari, whom some of you may know, is a graduate of Ramallah Friends, a couple of years older than I am, actually, and has had a number of activities over the years, including being one of the founding members of the AMAN, the National Coalition for Accountability and Integrity. It's a Palestinian organization that, as far as I know, is still very active. She's still on the board, but I think they're mostly doing advocacy and education and outreach work. But I'm wondering if there are other organizations who have arms that are specifically in addressing the needs of. There's been so much more settler violence in the last few years. It's overwhelming.
Yes, and that's where I want to give another shout out to the Action Hour because this is the Friday morning piece that those of us who are in the Pacific Coast at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. They have different speakers come in every week, and then the different speakers highlight different campaigns they're working on. Sometimes it's humanitarian aid, but a variety of different. That's one place where you'd get a variety of different ways to both plug in with your time, with your finances, with your resources across the board. Go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, I just a mountain of questions. So, from my experience in working in and around and with groups in the West Bank more than Gaza, how what's going on to try to get the other Arab countries to be more supportive of the Palestinians? Because I mean, look how long it's been. It was Lebanon that bombed the refugee camps. Once the PLO came into position, the Arab states sort of ran for the hills because they no longer controlled the military. It's almost like their neighbors don't want a Palestinian government, never mind a Palestinian state. I don't know if that's overstating it, but it's sort of how it looks. So is there anything going on to try to engage their neighbor countries in really supporting Palestinian autonomy?
Right. And of course, the situation for Palestinians is dire for any number of reasons. Um, uh, I can't answer your question because of my limited knowledge, but I do want to say this, that the country that is causing the greatest harm is the United States. I mean,
Amen.
but hands down.
Amen.
And
That was my
so,
problem with the genocide letter, is that not once mentioned the United States as the proxy
right.
perpetuator of the genocide. So
And so while there's plenty of blame to go around, um, our responsibility is profound. And before we
thank
start
you.
pointing the fingers at all kinds of other groups that really need to be doing more and why are they doing what they're doing, let's take responsibility for what we're doing.
I love that. Thank you.
Other questions? And if you think about taking this to your meeting, do you feel like you have the information, the resources to bring it to your meeting or to continue to develop a conversation around it to lead them into considering discernment around this?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Especially with what you point, the little guided tour you gave us of the website helps immensely being able to point at specific things. Thank you.
And of
Since
course, I
we
tapped into the website, so if you tool around it yourself, you'll find even more.
So we've got people here from Multnomah and University Friends meeting. Is there anything that you can share about how the discussion went when you discerned whether to take this pledge? And we know that it came out yes, but I'm sure there were moments that it might have felt like it was not going to come out yes on the pledge. Oh, Jim's there. Jim was
Well,
very involved. Can you?
Louise may want to answer too, but it was remarkably easy. I will say that and we approached it slowly. We had a called meeting in which we laid out the case both for endorsement of the Quakers Discern Genocide statement and for becoming an apartheid-free community. Then, at the next meeting for business, we proposed only that Friends join endorse the Quaker Genocide Statement. And then at the next month's meeting, we proposed that we become an apartheid-free community. And I would say at the called meeting and at the two meetings for business, we didn't encounter any real concern or opposition. We did encounter some profound regret on the part of a number of individuals who regrettably were convinced that this was appropriate and necessary, but who were very distraught to realize that things had come to these points.
Mm.
And there wasn't a great deal of discussion, and so I'm beginning to think that while in many communities everybody is progressive except for Palestine, here in Washington State everyone is progressive except for taxes.
That is an insider Washington joke, Allison, about progressive taxes, which we're working very hard on. Gail, Sanford is still out there from Multnomah. Is there any insight you can give to us from the Multnomah discussion?
Thank you, Susan. I don't have a good memory of how the discussion went, and my concern is what are we doing now to live out our commitment? We do have an active QPIN group, but I don't think we've done a good job of keeping this in front of meeting and working on it. The citing the website was helpful to me. I will go take a look at it.
So
And I noticed that there's this whole, okay, here's objections that Quakers bring up or that people bring up to the pledge, and that's one of those things that we can click on. How about Louise? Oh, wait a minute. Allison wants to go. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, Gail, that I've heard that the Quaker Affinity Group, one of the things that they're going to start doing is to reaching out to meetings that haven't been a part of their network to find out how they're living out the pledge, or if they want encouragement, or if they want to talk to folks. So there will be some intentional. I want you to do your work, and I want you to know that you're not alone.
That's good.
And
Good.
there's some intentional, how do we reach out and re-engage folks who may have taken the pledge
Okay.
2+ years ago.
Good. I'll watch for that. Thanks.
Louise, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I would agree with Jim. There was very little discussion, to be honest. And, you know, this is sad to say in some ways, but I'm not sure how many people are really familiar, really understand it and know the various aspects of it. We certainly, as far as I can see, we have not done anything after passing it. And part of the problem is that we now have Iran to worry about, and I think maybe things. Well, I worry so much that Gaza and the West Bank have just fallen off of everybody's uh, story, plate, whatever, and that's why I do what I can to call Congress people, but I really think at UFM I'm going to urge us to have a session where we do discuss this more and show some of the pictures or videos that Allison was showing tonight.
I do want to say for some meetings, it can go through smoothly, and it's great that we have examples of that. For other meetings, it can take months, potentially years. Um, and that's okay because the pledge was really created with two main goals. The first main goal was education. And so even bringing the pledge and going through a process of discernment means the pledge is working to help educate people. So if you take it to your meeting, or if your meeting's been discussing it for 6 months now and it's kind of gotten tabled, continue to use it as a way to further education, even if you may never reach consensus. And then, of course, the second piece, of course, the goal is to reach consensus, but to reach consensus so that a community can take action, and then that's kind of the second layer of work that needs done in what does that action look like, or maybe we knew what that action looked like the first year we signed it, but now it's a second year and maybe we need to revisit what's the action this year that we need to sign or take on. Go ahead, Paul.
To emphasize Allison's comment on education, when Eugene Friend's church adopted the pledge and the genocide statement, both about a year apart from each other, our experience was just like James' experience. It was a slam dunk for the congregation. The business meeting, we had an hour-long informational meeting ahead of time, and then a business meeting, and all the discussion was positive and affirmed. What made it that way for the apartheid-free pledge, in my view, is that the AFSC's website has a PowerPoint that I really want to point you to. It is an excellent PowerPoint on apartheid-free pledge. You can, and this is what we did, we edited it to fit our own church. And it is comprehensive. It goes slow. You can take out slides or add slides. You can highlight issues. But the PowerPoint for the apartheid-free pledge is just exceptional educational tool that I would really highlight for any meeting considering the pledge.
Can you help us point to that, Allison?
You want a visual?
A
Sure.
link or a link.
Okay, let me just give you the visual. So here we are. Let's go back to the website, and under the resources tab, I believe that one's under campaign materials, but let's just see. There is Understanding the Apartheid-Free Pledge PowerPoint template. Now, I want to note that this one was created in December 8th, 2023. We brag that we have 333 communities who've signed the pledge. The content is still really good. And we are actually in the process of updating it to include much more information, and that will also be found at the same spot, resources, campaign materials.
And it's easy for anyone else to update as well for your own congregation.
Exactly.
You can edit it easily.
Allison, can you talk a little more about how there are three phrases in the last line of the pledge? Could you talk a little bit about each one of them and what it means and why it was important to the people writing the pledge?
Yes, so we've already talked a little bit about apartheid, right? Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation. I mean, I could do a whole series on apartheid, but I think the video taps into that really well. What I'd like to do is give me just a minute. I'm pulling up.
It's settler colonialism that I suspect is going to raise some
Okay.
that people just kind of won't.
So this just in a nutshell is a graphic that explains the settler colonial project of Israel. That in 1918, the vast majority of the land was lived on by any number of groups of people, primarily Palestinians, and the Jewish National Fund began making land purchases to take over portions of the land. By 1947, you can see the growth of land that had been transferred to Jewish ownership. And this is before the creation of Israel. After the creation of Israel, you have this Palestinians' land continued to shrink. The map goes till 2017, and of course, that's almost a decade ago. And so the West Bank, you have they call it Swiss cheese, but you can just consider the black little pieces continue to grow and grow and further separate portions. And then, of course, in Gaza, quite frankly, this map for me explains what's happening in Gaza. Why a genocide? Why? Well, it's actually part of this long-term trajectory. And if you've been paying attention to what happens, even Gaza, more than half of Gaza, because of this yellow line, has already been taken away. And so it's this larger trajectory that is settler colonialism. And let's see, I think I can, yeah, before we go too far down the road of saying how awful what's happening in Palestine is, we need to again point the finger at the United States and acknowledge the settler colonial realities, which in which this country engaged in, and this unique relationship between the United States and Israel is unique for several reasons, not the least of which is our imperial enterprise.
Great. That
And
helps.
yep. And I think these graphics are in the PowerPoint. Paul, you can say whether they've been added to a PowerPoint.